so thank you very much for the introduction, Stella.
Thank you.
And this talk is very much going to pick up on some of the themes that both Stella and Arnaud have already talked about. So broadly, we are talking about what opportunities AI can offer L&D. And in the next 15 minutes or so, I'd like to offer you a picture of what this could look like in the future. And it's a future that's not too far away, as you've already seen from the video. These things are already underway in organisations like Rise Up, and I'm very excited to see where they go. So just a quick note about this picture that I'm painting. This is all based on research on how we learn best from psychology, the learning sciences, and educational neuroscience. All right, so I want to start by having a look at the learning challenges we often face in our organisations. First of all, a lack of engagement in learning. So do our employees make the time to actually spend on learning as much as they can, or do other things get in the way? Then we've got lack of retention. This is a really big one, not just in organisations, but in education as well, that we don't tend to remember a lot of what we've actually learnt, which is very frustrating sometimes. And finally, a really important one, that we lack transfer to real-world contexts. So we might spend a long time developing ourselves and engaging in learning content, but we're not actually being able to apply that knowledge in as much detail as we should into our real-world jobs. So how can AI help us to overcome some of these challenges? In order to do this, I want you to use your imaginations a little bit. Imagine that you are an organisation who's fully embraced AI in their learning. You've been using it for quite some time. And I am an employee in your organisation who is looking to develop their critical thinking skills. I'm a team leader and I want to make better decisions. And this is a skill that I've identified as being one that would be really useful for me. So what would my learning look like? And how would it help me engage? How would AI help me engage more in my learning? So let's think about personalization of content, which we saw a little bit in the video. So in the past, one of the reasons I haven't engaged much in learning is that I haven't really seen the relevance of some of the courses that are available, or I don't trust that they're not going to have, or I don't trust that they will have enough of what is useful for my particular context. So I don't want to waste my time in courses that are not quite relevant. And also, when I've looked in the catalogue, it's about 57 different courses or webinars I could take, which is completely overwhelming. But now that you've embraced AI, I know that the learning on offer is going to be tailored to me, it's going to be curated for me, and completely personalised, so that I know I'm going to benefit from this learning, and that's going to make me more likely to spend the time with that learning as well. Then instant meaningful feedback. For me, and for many of you, I'm sure, if we don't feel like we're progressing in our learning, then it's very demotivational, and we tend to disengage from our learning in those kind of situations where we can't feel any progress. We often have quizzes and get feedback from those in our online courses, but in the past that hasn't really given me enough. It hasn't been meaningful enough feedback. But in the future, and not so distant future, as I've said, we'll be able to have instant meaningful feedback throughout our learning journeys, and it's not just going to be generic feedback and generic assessments. They're going to be completely tailored to my work context. So I'm going to get feedback that's really relevant to what I'm going to use the learning for. And it will continue beyond the course itself. So if I take a learning course, I will get feedback through there, but AI will help me continue to get feedback through my working life as well. And finally, we'll hear a lot about this, a dedicated learning coach, so an AI coach. So in the past, I've really struggled with the time to engage with learning, but one of the things an AI coach can do is to find slots in the calendar for me to learn, to block out, to make sure no one else books it in for a meeting. They can also send me helpful reminders, and they can send me little snippets of learning through my day, which is fully customizable. So yeah, there are a lot of things that we can customize about our AI learning coaches, including the name. I've decided to call mine Lara, just to make it easier to say as the presentation goes on. And the other great thing about this AI technology is that it can be fully integrated into the tools that I use. So I don't have to load another application to launch Lara. She's already in things like Microsoft Teams and Slack. So what about retention? So Lara, the AI learning coach, is an expert in cognitive psychology and neuroscience. So she's able to use the best techniques to help me remember things. So these are just a few that we know are effective for remembering content: spaced repetition, retrieval practice, and elaborative learning. So with spaced repetition, I get regular reviews of the content that I've been learning, and not just from things I've learned this week or last week, but things that I've learned quite a few months ago or years ago as well, because we know we need to keep refreshing. Retrieval practice, we know that it's not enough just to review material, reread it, re-see it. We need to actually work hard to get that information out of our brains in order to remember it. So all these quizzes, although I was a bit negative about them earlier, are actually very helpful for remembering material. So Lara sends me little quizzes, and again, I can configure her so that she sends me one a day, maybe one a week, or if I'm really in learning mode, she might do one every few hours. That's if you're really hardcore in your learning, of course. And finally, elaborative learning. So we learn better when we process things more deeply and link it to our prior knowledge. So Lara knows what I do day to day, and she knows what I've already learnt, and she prompts me to make those links for myself so that I'm really deeply engaging with that learning content and better able to apply it. Which brings me on to transfer. So this is, I think, one of the most exciting bits. In the past, I've quite enjoyed some courses I've done, but as I said before, a lot of them are not closely enough linked to what I do day to day. And I don't get as much practice as I want to of the skills that I want to take into my day-to-day work. But with AI, we can now very quickly and cheaply create simulations that were reserved for people like pilots or surgeons. But as AI advances, it will be possible to create simulations very quickly for all types of jobs. So this means I can train in a safe environment, make mistakes, learn from those mistakes, which is great from learning without having any kind of consequences. It's a little bit like playing a game. And as many of you will recognize, with things like compliance training, which tends to be a little bit on the dull side, this really spices things up. So definitely for compliance training, very good as well. And finally, integration into everyday work life. So the other thing that Lara is an expert in is coaching psychology. So she can help me set goals and reflect on my learning so that I'm really making the most of it every day. So, for example, this morning she sent me a little message to say, what one critical thinking technique are you going to use in the meeting that you've got later on, or the board report that you're writing? And if I want more support, I can ask her to give me suggestions. For example, I have a workshop coming up next week with my team, and we have to make some big decisions about what projects to prioritize. She can give me some tips as to what kind of techniques I could use if I'm struggling to come up with those myself. And finally, at the end of a day or at the end of a meeting, she can prompt me to reflect on the learning that I have implemented, what went well, and what I can improve for next time. So I'm constantly looking to improve, which is, we know, really important for learning. So hopefully some of that picture seemed quite a positive one, But you might be wondering how L&D fits in, or whether Lara's just going to do all of this. But I would say L&D has an absolutely crucial role in this. So first of all, in shaping the tools and tailoring them for your organization. So we talked about simulations and AI coaches, that in order for them to be really helpful, they need a lot of great input. So it's the input you get from your subject matter experts, from your stakeholders internally, that can inform the scenarios and the coaches to make sure that they're really true to life and that they're useful for people in your organization. It's also going to involve a lot of experimentation to get this right. And with your expertise, you're able to experiment and also, importantly, evaluate the results of those experiments to see where things are going well and where things can improve. And finally, determining when AI should be used, and then when actually AI is not the best tool and that there are other types of learning that are more appropriate. So we can't forget about face-to-face learning and collaborative learning and all the benefits that that brings. And so your expertise is really important there to make sure that we're using the right technology or the right methods for the right kind of learning. All right, so that hopefully, yes, will bring us to the end of this little picture. I hope that it has sparked some ideas, either positive or negative, in terms of where learning could go. And I'm really looking forward to your questions in the Q&A and having some interesting conversations later on. So thank you very much.